Welcome to the Fifth Gate podcast. We have had the idea of starting a podcast for years, but we finally made it happen as we were driving home on a 10-hour road trip from a horse show. Our passion is the Icelandic horse and all aspects of the worldwide community that surrounds it. Here, we hope to come together as equestrian professionals to share our hardest lessons, our biggest wins, and our hopes for the future of Icelandic horsemanship. Our conversations aim to educate, inspire, and to grow all people like us who love Icelandic horses. From enthusiasts and amateurs to trainers, competitors, and field specialists. In today's episode, we are interviewing Robin Guernsey, creator and manager of the world-famous social media account, IamGlytja. Robin is so witty and creative, and she's very talented at making content that makes people smile, all by documenting the daily shenanigans of her 6 personal Icelandic horses. We have the privilege of diving deeper into how her account came to be, the value she believes horses can offer all people, and we answer some of the most common questions she gets from her followers about Icelandic horses. We hope you enjoy this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. And afterwards, check out all of her heartwarming content Robin is sharing on her social media account, IamGlytja.
We just had a dramatic countdown.
Yeah, there was a whole countdown on the screen. It was very intense. Oh, okay.
Okay, good. Well, welcome, Robin of IamGlytja.
Our first interview.
I know, it's so exciting. I'm thrilled that you're here with us. I'm thrilled that you're willing to take part in this journey that we're embarking on now. We're going to start with some personal story questions because we want to get to know you a little bit and allow other people that maybe aren't familiar with the IamGlytja page to learn about that. In a couple words, how would you describe IamGlytja and what you do with your horses?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for the invite. I'm really thrilled to be here. IamGlytja, my husband and I sort of summarize it. We came up with our own little tagline, but we don't use it often, and we should use it more. It's horse sense and nonsense. So some days, we do educational and informative type posts, and other days it's just all nonsense. It's just, herd dynamics and sense of humor and just stuff to make people laugh.
That's awesome.
And how long have you had the IamGlytja page active?
Well, we are coming up, I think, on 5 years this month, I believe. Yeah, 5 years this month.
And how many followers do you have now?
If you look at the 3 platforms of TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, it's around 150,000.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and according to those sites, because not everybody that watches the videos will be a follower. When I look at the sort of the statistics that they have, they're telling me that around 3 million people per month watch our videos.
What great promotion for the Icelandic horse.
Yeah, that is amazing. And it's an international audience, isn't it?
Yeah, it is an international audience. Surprisingly, we have a lot of Icelanders that follow us too. When I was in Iceland last month, I had a couple of Icelandic people saying, I feel like I already know you because I follow IamGlytja. And I just took that as a huge honor. And then I caught myself and I kind of looked at them and said, oh, I hope this is a good thing. I want to do everything I can to promote the breed and, talk about all the wonderful things that Icelandic horses do. And I always have a fear of misrepresenting or misstating things. So it's always nice when an Icelander gives me a little pat on the back.
Absolutely, from the source. So, Robin, how did you and Will start your journey with Icelandics? When did that begin?
Well, yes, I grew up with Arabians, and my dad and I used to do endurance rides. So, and I lived in Arizona at the time. So I did my first endurance ride, 25-mile endurance ride when I was 7 years old. That was our thing. That was always our thing. My dad and I would do endurance riding. And then when I got into college, I went off to college, I got out of horses. And then when I hit my mid 40s, I had sort of a midlife crisis, mental breakdown. I don't know what you want to call it. But I told my husband, I said, I'm just working all the time and I want to get back to the basics. I want to get back to the time when I was the happiest in my life. And Will said, well, when was that? And I said, well, when I had horses. So my sister-in-law, coincidentally, had Icelandic horses in New York by Thor Icelandics. She had already had two Icelandic horses living with her. And so we met the horses, and I'm like, wow, these are really cool horses. And it's not that far to the ground. They're problem solvers and they have great personality. They bond well with people. And I just kind of fell in love with them from that time.
And was Glitja your first horse?
She was my first Icelandic horse, yes.
First Icelandic horse, yes. Okay, that's awesome. And then who was your second?
The second one was Soti.
Oh, that's right, Soti.
Yeah, you know Soti.
I do from when I was a kid.
Yeah, so we got Soti because, my husband was not originally a horse husband. He said, we have a big farm here called Winter Horse Farm. When I kind of sought out the Icelandic breed, I was so happy to find a farm in Wisconsin, and he drove me up to the farm the first day, and he said, I'm not into the horses, so I'm just going to drop you off here and then I'm going to go mountain biking. And so he did that for a while, but then, there was this one day this horse named Soti arrived at Winter Horse. And I asked Barb and Dan, the owners, I said, hey, would you mind if Will just comes with us on this trail ride? And they said, sure, he can ride Soti. And Will got on Soti and we went. We had the most amazing trail ride. The tipping point was when, my husband likes beer. And Soti got down, at the rest stop, Soti got down all the way to, his belly just to kind of take a rest. And when he popped back up, he protected Will's beer. It was so still that Will could still hold his beer. So Will looked at me that day and he's like, all right, I'm now a horse husband. And we bought Soti.
That's awesome.
That's
a great story.
So Glitja's the boss mare. Could you describe in just a couple words what that means in your herd of horses?
Yeah. So Barb Riva sort of explained to me what a boss mare was. She said in Iceland, it's always the strongest mare that's in charge. And it's the strongest mare that tells the herd where to eat, where to get water, where to find safety. And that became very evident when I would trail ride with Glitja because she was very bossy and she would make all of the horses on the trail, she would put them in order. She had to be in the front. And then she would go down the line and discipline all of the horses until they got in the order that she wanted them to be in. And it was other people didn't think it was that funny. We weren't invited back to very many trail rides. But Glitja she had a certain order that she wanted every horse to ride in. And I didn't really understand that until Barb explained it to me one day. She's like, yeah, she's the boss mare. She is looking out for all of the other horses and she wants a certain order. And so the more I observed her, the more just at home in her natural herd, she definitely sets the rules for the entire herd. For the most part, they do what she tells them to do.
So one of the things we ask professionals, and Mackenzie and I discussed, is in your journey with horses, what was maybe a moment that most made you want to quit?
Or it might even be in your social media career.
Yes.
It's like what has been maybe the most discouraging part of it.
Actually, it just recently happened. Not to the point where it made me want to quit, but I've never had this situation where I had somebody 2 weeks ago, and I think Mackenzie, I texted you about this because I was like, what do I do here? But it was a woman that was, I think she's from the Netherlands. And she just sent me a whole string of messages saying, I don't know what I'm talking about. And I copied her content. And I mean, she was just nasty. And, I went through cancer 2 years ago. And so I have a whole different perspective than I used to. And my perspective now is I just wrote her back and I said, it sounds like you need a hug. You need a hug or you need a nap. And she's like, no, I'm fine. I just want you to know that, you don't know what you're talking about. And, she called me all kinds of names, but I take that as a learning experience. I take that as Robin, before you post something, I really got to make sure that it's like the correct information. And it wasn't that I had incorrect information out there. It just wasn't the way that she would have worded it. I didn't take offense to it. I was just kind of a little stunned by some of the name calling, but I got over it. It made me a better content provider, I think, going forward. Like today, we published something about breeding evaluations, and I think you guys know Kaylee Kavanagh. She sent me some terrific video from the World Championships in Switzerland and it was constant video about the breeding evaluations. And I thought, okay, I better really do my homework because I don't know anything about breeding evaluations, but I think this is content that other people will want to know about. So I better make sure it's the right information. I'm doing more of my due diligence for sure now, just to make sure that little Miss Netherlands doesn't come after me again.
Well, Robin, we really appreciate, I think I can speak for the whole Icelandic horse community. We appreciate all of the promotion you're doing for the breed and the way that you do it to shed a positive light and to just create so much friendliness around our breed on an international and more approachable stage. While, of course, I love the flashiness of our sport coverage, I think the unique angle that you are offering the world is so much more approachable and accessible to a wider audience.
You're making me blush. Thank you.
Was there a moment in your career you were most proud of, especially maybe with this IamGlytja social media page that you have built from the ground up, and maybe a moment also that you've been most humbled by?
Oh my goodness. I think I'm proud every time. It's almost like a daily thing. I started it because as a gratitude journal, actually. Just to give you a little bit of background before I answer the question, because I think it'll help give some context to it. Like I said, my dad and I grew up riding horses with my dad, and those were really, really special times. When I got back into horses, my husband Will and I decided to build a house with a barn attached to it because we're all in on these Icelandic horses. Like they are our family. And when the house was about halfway through construction, I had a bad fall off Posterna, and I was in the hospital and I had to have major surgery on my right arm because I thought my right arm could stop my fall, and I was very wrong. And so I had to have some new fancy hardware put into it. But when I got home from the hospital, my dad called me, and my mom was also on the phone too, but my dad was the main speaker on the phone call, and he said, I really want to come visit. And I said, well, we're halfway through building our home. Once we get the house done, you can come visit. And he's like, no, I really want to come now. And I'm like, Dad, just hold, he was just being a dad. And I said, just hold on, give me a few more weeks. The house will be done. You can come visit. Well, we hung up the phone, and the next morning I woke up to the news that my dad, who I just talked to 12 hours ago, had taken his own life. And that was a really pivotal, very difficult moment to understand. Hey, I just talked to him and he just told me he was packing up the car to come see me, and now he took his own life. I really grappled with that as you might imagine, when your dad takes his own life and you don't really understand why. And so for a year, I went through this grieving process. And then on the 1 year anniversary of his death, that's why I started IamGlytja, because I'm like, there's a lot of people in this world that just need a hug or virtual hug, or just to feel less lonely. So I started IamGlytja based on that. It was my gratitude journal. It was something that I would post in every day that I was thankful for, or the horses doing something just naturally that just made my heart full, or just made me like feel grateful to be here. Of course, since then it has evolved, but that was the whole premise behind IamGlytja. So, you know, the moments that I'm proud of, it's daily. It's a daily thing when somebody writes in on the Facebook page or Instagram or whatever and says, you really, and I have pages and pages of heartfelt comments from people saying, I'm going through cancer right now, and your page just really brightened my day, or I just lost my dad, and I feel less alone now. And I will never forget when I was going through a cancer and I woke up from my surgery. I found out that my anesthesiologist follows IamGlytja, and she said, you know, you got me through COVID. And I said, what do you mean? I mean, I was groggy. I just woken up from surgery. And she said, that page, even though I'm not a horse person, that page got me through COVID. I got chills. I mean, I'm drugged up, I'm half asleep, right? And I still got the chills because I'm like, wow, to make an impact in somebody's life like that, multiplied by thousands of people, I mean, that's a daily pride. Yeah, a long-winded answer to your question, but it's daily. It's daily. You know, something that humbled me. Well, you know, Miss Netherlands last week or 2 weeks ago, she really humbled me. I know you can't do everything right and you can't please everybody, but wow, this lady, she really had some fangs on her.
I think it's just what you just said was you came into this to share joy. And now you're in a position where you're also sharing knowledge.
Education.
And education. And that's also like challenging. You've become this educator almost by accident when your every intention was just to share joy and gratitude. That's a tough thing to balance. I could see that being kind of just a evolution, something that you have to grow through. I know that you had some questions for us that were some just common questions that
you receive on your page. Now that you're such an ambassador for the Icelandic horse.
I so appreciate both of you being available when there's a question that I can't answer, because that does come up quite a bit. Let's see. The first one, why can't the horses go back to Iceland?
I know that it has been many, many years since there's been any importation to Iceland. The reason is diseases. So we have a lot of equine to equine communicable diseases here in the United States, and those diseases just don't exist in Iceland. I will say I have a little personal experience here with this, because the second time I worked in Iceland, I was working at a farm named Fet. It was during the year that there was something called the hestapestin, which is like the horse pest. It ended up going horse to horse across all of Iceland and making many of the horses very, very ill. They had to cancel Landsmót, the big competition that's every other year, due to all the horses being sick. They had to cancel multiple breeding assessments and shows. It really shut down the entire horse industry in Iceland.
While I think the practical purpose of this policy is disease prevention, I actually read recently they had decided to try to mix in some bloodlines from Eastern horses, so Eastern Europe, and they were very unhappy about the outcome of that, and they thought that it was destroying the breed. Now, because the breed has been so isolated for so long, it's for disease prevention more than anything else that it continues.
No, that's the most thorough answer I've heard. Thank you. Another question we get quite a bit is, okay, I'm in love with the horses. How do I get involved with Icelandic horses? Where in the United States are there farms or people that can help me get involved with Icelandic horses?
The unfortunate part of this is that we are very spread out because the Icelandic horse community is still growing. It is more few and far between. There is quite a concentration of us in Kentucky. But aside from that, it is, like I said, fewer and farther between. The USIHC, which is the United States Icelandic Horse Congress, on their website, there is a list of farms that is accessible to the public. And I will say that those farm owners have volunteered to have their farms listed because they are eager and passionate about our breed and they want to introduce more people to it. If you use that list or that directory, any of those people are going to be happy to hear from new folks that they can plug into the Icelandic horses.
I think the other place I would check is the trainer list on the
trainer list as well. Yeah.
United States Icelandic Horse Congress website.
Yeah.
There you can see if there are any certified trainers in your general area.
Yeah.
So that can be a great resource, especially if you're looking for someone to learn from or someone to instruct you on the horses.
Yeah, specifically for instruction, for maybe riding an Icelandic horse for the first time, I would go straight to the trainer list because that's where where you're going to get in touch with someone that can make that happen for you. But the farm list, that's a mix of businesses, but also private owners that just love talking about the breed.
We get asked sometimes, how did the Tölt evolve?
Oh, I love this one.
I love this question too. This is a really nerdy question. I'll let Carrie go first. She probably has a more scripted answer.
The neat thing about a 4-beat ambling gait like the Tölt is it actually is something that is in multiple breeds. With Icelandic horses, we call our 4-beat ambling gait a Tölt.
Yeah.
But in other gaited breeds, it may be referred to by a different name, such as a rack, or a Peruvian Passos do like Paso Largo and Paso Corto and different gaits. So there are many gaited breeds. And the Icelandic horse is one of the gaited breeds. And the ability to gait is actually controlled by genetics. There are actually 3 genes that they've isolated now that contribute to gaitedness. The one that's discussed and understood the best at this point in time is the DMRT3 gene. And the DMRT3 gene actually, my layman's understanding, not a scientist, is that it controls a group of nerves in the horse's lower back that basically offer the existence of laterality or not. Your average horse is 3-gaited, has walk, trot, and canter, and Icelandics, as we know, are 5-gaited. They have walk, trot, tolt, canter, and then they also have the flying pace. What's really neat about this and what I love is that gaitedness pops up in all sorts of weird places. I have some dear friends down in Texas.
Me too, yes.
Katie and Elliot Holtzman, they have versatile horsemanship down in Texas. Elliot drew for the Mustang makeover a Mustang, gray Mustang, that definitely gaited, actually piggy paced, as we would say.
I appreciate that very thorough answer because it might already answer this next question. But we get asked all the time, oh, is the Tölt similar to a rack in this breed or the Passos gait in this breed? Which then, the people that ride gaited horses, they understand and appreciate the genes are what cause the gaits to happen. The non-horse people, though, they see like the Tölt and they get really nervous and they think that it's the big lick kind of stuff. So could you talk a little bit about, how, I mean, we know it's drastically different, but can you like give us bullet points for like that it's not big lick?
Yeah. So I think 2 things. Tennessee walkers are the ones that have done the big lick, the soaring, the extreme shoeing, although there are other gaited breeds that also participate in that. So I think those concerns are actually very valid among your followers because they see a horse that's gaiting with big movement. And in some breeds, that is associated with very harmful, very just bad horsemanship. So I think they're right to be concerned. Interestingly enough, I think the genetics, though, are the same, which means that they are genetically 5-gaited, just like our horses. The main difference between the things are the methods that are used to train them. So if you're putting gasoline and other substances that hurt your horse on their legs, and that's the only reason that they're moving in a certain way or lifting in a certain way, or if you're strapping 3-4-inch plates and they do these crazy things with their shoeing that is just plain
that way
illegal in our sport,
pounds.
Then you're creating types of movement that are just entirely unnatural, very manufactured movement.
So what I would say is that really, like you said, to summarize, the genetics are the same, but I think the goals are different and therefore the means are different.
Yes.
And that with Icelandic horsemanship, it's about building the gait over time and over a collection of smaller exercises and the long game training of it versus manufacturing that movement through equipment.
Artificial means.
Artificial means, yes.
I think that that is the number one difference. And I will say that in our breed, we're seeing horses with bigger and bigger movement, with more extreme shoulder lift and swinging of the front feet. And number one, those horses are bred to be that way. It's not because something has been strapped or put on their feet. They're born running like that.
They come out of the
pasture.
womb like that. Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing. And not all Icelandics move that. There's only a small percentage of the population that actually has that type of movement because it's actually quite difficult to breed. We have very strict rules and regulations that enforce that in regards to the length of hoof, the type of shoeing. Everything is measured down to the millimeter on that front.
Yes.
So it's just a very different sport in
Yes.
regards to how it's trained for.
It's extremely regulated. Extremely
Exactly.
regulated. Yeah.
And then I think the final thing that I would mention is that in the Icelandic horse community, we're very open to concerns about, as we breed horses with these more large movements, if that could be negative for their well-being in some ways, or their longevity as riding horses. However, I will say, and this is my personal experience, so we don't have scientific data to back this up yet, but we have horses in our barns that compete at a very high level with huge movements and traveled all over the U.S. for over 15 years competing at the highest levels and are now still being used in our lesson program at age 28. We have Pegasus from Skikney that went twice to the World Championships, has these incredible movements. And Mackenzie's teaching lessons on him every week right now. Yes, that's Stjarna's dad, exactly. Paul Stjarna's dad, and he's still going strong at 28. We have had horses that have those big movements and actually have a longer career than most horses in the horse industry worldwide.
It is a valid concern, those just elastic big movements, but I think what is contingent upon their longevity or the longevity of that horse is actually the training approach.
Yeah.
It's how we are building the horse up over its career and maintaining that horse to be able to manage their talent and ability.
Well, that was a really great explanation. I think more people need to hear that. So we'll try to blast that out. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, will Glytja ever have foals? And that question makes me bristle a little bit. I have no business breeding horses. There are too many unwanted horses in the United States. I used to volunteer with a horse rescue group, and I saw all these backyard breeders who would breed their cute mare to this cute stallion, and then, you know, the foal ended up in slaughter. I refuse to be a part of that problem. But I do recognize that, you know, the really good breeders that have the background information and have the education and the skills and they study the bloodlines, you know, that there is a market, obviously, for them. So my question is not, will Glytja have foals, but what do you look for in a mare? And can we start with a mare? You know, how do you know that your mare is breed worthy?
I think that question has 3 different layers. The first layer is, does the horse have some sort of proven record in breeding assessments or in sport competitions? Or was it assessed by a trainer and really proven in some way? We have first prize horses, we have second prize horses. If a horse has a breeding assessment, the number one purpose of that assessment is that gives you very detailed information on the horse.
And its breedability.
That's the point,
right? Of the assessment.
So their measurements, their gaits, their conformation, it's all picked apart. And that's important, not just to determine that horse's quality, but also to determine that horse's weaknesses, because they might be important to keep in mind if you're taking that horse to breeding.
Yes.
Maybe in the assessment, they had great scores everywhere, but for quality of legs. Then you want to be really careful to not put that mare with a stallion that has poor quality of legs. And then the second thing, and this kind of goes with the first oddly, is I would look at the horse's character. The horse's usability is really important. Even in our top breeding horses, say Orri frá Þúfu, who produced some of the best horses in Iceland for years, I think only 25% of the Orri frá Þúfu offspring went on to be first prize.
I have horses in my barn who I think at first glance, standing and looking at them, they would not be my first choice for breeding. But I ride them and their work ethic is incredible. Their character is willing and positive, and their temperament with all levels of riders is extremely sellable.
Yeah, the trainability, and they've even found that there is some genetics behind trainability. They found a trainability gene.
That's right. That's a new thing.
So that's a new thing, and I don't understand it super well. I need to look further into those studies, but I do think that that's a big piece of this.
Yeah.
If you look back at the bloodlines, you want to know a couple of things. You want to know, first off, if your horse is an anomaly in comparison to maybe its sisters and brothers. There's one stallion in particular that throws horses with bad character, and your horse is the only horse under the stallion that has good character. That's a more risky horse to breed, right? So kind of looking at siblings and understanding that is really important. And then two, when you're looking at bloodlines, maybe your horse didn't get the jackpot of great Tölt, but their grandfather and grandmother on both sides were incredible Tölt horses. That might be taken into consideration, that might be something that your horse could give, even though they didn't get it themselves genetically. That was a bit of a long-winded anser, sorry, but those would be the...
No, I love that. I love the explanation. When I first bought Glytja, I asked Barbariva, I said, why didn't you ever breed her? And she said, yeah, she just didn't have the right personality. And now this all makes sense.
Don't tell her that.
I know, she is a bossy mare, and I can understand why they didn't want that to be carried into future generations.
Well, and I will add a caveat. I actually think it's okay. You could decide as a breeder that you love bossy mares with a big attitude, that are super extroverted, and that can be a part of your breeding goal. So the other caveat I will add is that different breeders and different people may choose different emphases, and that's okay. If you told me, you were like, Harry, IamGlytja, we want to start a breeding program, and we want to breed XYZ.
We want to breed boss mares.
We want to breed boss mares. I would be like, okay, well, let's sit down and think about that, and think about what possible issues might arise, and how would we breed strategically? You see what I mean? So I think it's just a very thoughtful and very...
Lots to consider.
Lots of considerations always go into good breeding choices.
Let's see. I get the question a lot. How do you pronounce the horses' names, and where do the names come from?
We're going to have to go through each horse's name.
Yeah, let me tell you, I will not be the one to pronounce them. We will let Carrie do that.
I don't know, you're pretty good.
So I can tell. Okay, so Glytja.
Glytja.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you say Poststjarna so beautifully. I slaughter it. Go ahead.
So Polstjarna. So Polstjarna. Stjarna. So yes, Stjarna is star. If you didn't roll your R and you wanted to say it without rolling your R, I would say Polstjarna.
Okay, and Hrimnir?
Hrimnir.
And Guslari?
Kaslari.
Okay, and then Frodi.
Frodi.
Did I miss anyone? I think I got them all. So how do Icelandic breeders come up with the names?
Well, they can't just come up with them. They have to be approved. And so there's a pre-approved list, and you can propose, like you can send in a name that you're considering, but that also has to be approved before they are registered with that name, if it's a name that is not included in that list.
Like the inspiration behind the names, like are they named after like an Icelandic nature, or the color of the horse, or sagas?
It's everything.
It depends. I think different breeders have different
That's true.
themes.
They have genres or themes that they go by. Yeah. Some breeders.
So a lot of breeders will follow the same, first letter from the mother's name to the offspring's name. Sometimes it has something to do with something that the breeder sees in the horse, or something with their appearance.
Let's just say sometimes the word is prettier than the meaning.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So themes vary, but that's really up to the breeder. The breeder gets to pick.
Yeah.
Okay, as long as it's in the predetermined book of names.
Book of names, yes.
Or it gets approval.
Or it gets approved, yes. It can get approved.
Yes.
Okay, good to know. Lots of people, so a couple of weeks ago, we posted a video about the horse trek that I did in Iceland, and that video got shared, I don't know how many thousands of times, and people are now putting an Icelandic horse trek on their bucket list. So what comes along with that question is, what is the weight limit? Am I too heavy to ride an Icelandic horse in Iceland on a horse trek?
I'll at least start it. I think that question, but I think it's contingent upon so many things. That limit varies with each individual horse and also rider. An experienced or a professional rider that say is like 6'5" and weighs over 200 pounds is going to feel a lot different on a horse's back than a rider of that same size that has never ridden a horse before. There's just going to be a certain balanceability of that rider that a horse either has to compensate or not compensate for that you have to consider seriously. The other thing is how a horse is built, their conformation, their back, the strength of their top line, not even just the strength of their top line, but the build of their top line. So there are a lot of pieces to consider that make this hard to determine a universal limit. I think it's impossible to, really, because also even within our breed being smaller than average, having maybe not a huge range in height, there still is a huge difference between a horse that has a lighter build that you say is like 135 centimeters versus a horse with a heavier, stockier, wider chest, wider back end that is 150 centimeters. Those horses carrying capacities for practical reasons are going to be very different.
I mean, this is a really tough issue for us because we are adults riding ponies.
Yeah.
Like, we have to accept that fact.
We are.
We are adults training and riding fluffy ponies. The interesting thing is that online and in a lot of horse discussions, people will throw around percentages. What many people don't know is those body weight percentages actually come from an old cavalry book that was created way back when. There is actually very little actual data or research to back any particular percentage number as it stands now. The main answer is that we don't really know. So you can actually go on Google Scholar and look up body weight ratio studies in horses in general and in Icelandic horses, and you will find some. There was one at the last World Championships 2 years ago that looked at the body weight ratio of the riders at the World Championships with their horses, because those horses have to pass so many fit to compete parameters that they're a good population to go, okay, we at least know that this percentage was okay with healthy working horses. So factors that play a role, like Mackenzie mentioned, are the horse's conformation. So not just their height, but how they're built, their width of chest, their width of back, how stocky their legs, their tendons are. Other
also
factors,
their fitness, their physical fitness as well.
Yes, are their fitness, how conditioned they are to carry different weights, how practiced are they, what is their body condition score? Are they overweight themselves, or are they in optimal body condition? Things like saddle fit, Mackenzie mentioned, rider experience and rider balance. It's just too multifactorial to isolate all those two variables.
I think the important thing for the horse is to be honest with whatever trek you're reaching out to. Like, say if we're speaking directly to your audience, Robin, who is putting a trek on their bucket list. Be honest to your trekking company about what your body condition is, what your weight is, and also what your experience is. And make sure that, especially too, I would say with experience, that you rather allow them to underestimate you rather than overestimate you, so that they can prepare and consider what horses they're going to pair you with when you are riding.
Yes, I think that's really important because it's so multifactorial. They might have a particular set of horses that are really good with heavier riders that are also experienced, and then the practice that Terrell and I use, we don't prescribe to any weight limits so much as that we listen to the horse.
Yes, trust that the trekking company knows their horses. And so you give them as much information as you can for them to make the most informed decisions about the combinations they make.
Yeah, because we will watch horses, and if we see Terrell is a much heavier rider, he sometimes will get on a horse and ride it for 5 minutes and go, nope, this is a no-go. I'm too much for this horse. Being sensitive enough to your animals and knowing, oh, this one's fine with it, but this one isn't, is very interesting. And I think that's just so individual and needs to be read rider to rider and horse to horse. Each situation is unique.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Robin, do you have any more questions that you really want to get to before the end of this, or should we start asking you some of our future horsemanship questions?
I do not. I'm going down the list, and you have both done just a great job of giving a lot of detailed, thorough information that I think all of our followers are going to really love to hear. It's going to be it's going to be next level kind of thinking for a lot of them, and I know that they'll really appreciate the education.
Well, if we
let's dive into
these, put you in the hot seat again. What value do horses have for humans and society now and moving forward?
What value do they have?
In your opinion?
Gosh, it's hard for me to think of the question like that because I don't think about a horse. What can a horse do to add value to my life? I think of it more as, I hope I'm adding value to their life. um, and some of my horses are like, yeah, no, Robin, you don't add a lot. So later, and I respect that. Glytja would never say that to me. The value to my life is just, I think back to when I was going through cancer, for example. It was a very aggressive type of cancer. And, when I had to go get some really painful procedures done, my husband would, if I were laying down on the table, he would show me, we have security cameras in our barn, and he would show me live footage of what the horses were doing while I was screaming in pain. So the value that they brought me is they brought my heart rate down because I looked at that. I looked at his phone. I looked at that video and I thought, this is worth fighting for. I'm gonna push through this really terrible time right now because I'm definitely afraid of needles. And when you get when you get a bunch of needles near you, I was flipping out. But I'm gonna power through this. I'm gonna mentally power through this because I want to get home and see my little sassholes because they're the ones that are, they're in the center of my heart. So yeah, that's the value that they bring me is, when you have difficult times in life, like just getting through it and knowing that there's a bigger picture at the end of it and a lot of fun. All I wanted to do was get back on my horse and go for a really fast trail ride, cantering up hills and, that's what I focused on. And so that's the value. Long-winded answer. Sorry.
Oh, I love that. Just
That's
enjoying horses.
Bringing joy.
Yeah, that's great.
And comfort.
Yeah. I love that. My horses, probably all horses, but they live in the present. They don't worry about the future. Of course, they remember some of the past, but they're really about what's here in front of me now. And I've tried to just take that philosophy.
So this is a bit of a negative twist, but what do you dislike most about the horse industry?
Well, I don't love getting up we live with our horses, and so I don't love getting up to a frat house every morning. Because you look out you both have been to my house, you look out the kitchen window and there's the breezeway, and Comey is our personal fitness instructor. So at 2, 3 in the morning, he's in there playing and he's going down the line of who wants to play with me. And so if they're playing and then they're pooping and they're playing and they're pooping, I wake up to a mess every morning. But I know at some point I'm not going to see that mess. So I'm going to appreciate it now for what it is. But I don't love cleaning poop. No. Especially when it's ground in.
So the future of the horse industry needs to involve self-cleaning barns.
Or less pooping horses. Yes. That's a new breeding goal.
I would just, at this point, I would just settle for a poop rake that doesn't lose, number 13 on there, because once one of those little, on your poop rake, once those little, what I'm saying, once those little arms come off, it's just the poop. Yeah, it just gets messy.
Yeah, it's a worthless fork after that.
I love that.
The only other negative thing is just the heartbreak, when you lose one. People ask sometimes, how did Sodi die? And, we lost him to colic. He was fine in the morning, and 2 hours later, he was not fine. And, the heartbreak that you go through when one of them goes to Valhalla, it's hard.
Absolutely. I have one final question for you, and that is, where do you see horsemanship in 20 years?
I would love it if people just understood the depth of what a horse offers. Right now, you have, I think, two categories of people that come onto the IamGlytja page. You have the horse people and then the non-horse people. And the horse people understand the relationship and the therapy and all of the good things about the horse. The non-horse people are the type they drive by on a highway at 55 miles an hour and they see a horse on the, horse pasture on the side of the road. Oh, horses. And that's as close as they ever get to a horse. We have little kids that come out to our place all the time and they are terrified of horses, and even some adults because they had a bad experience when they were a kid and just terrified of the horse. And, with my gang, they're very sociable. We get them over their fear in about 30 seconds because all of my horses are snugglers. Well, except for Sterna. The rest of them are snugglers. I would like for people to just understand that they're not just something you see on the side of a highway. These are living creatures with a brain, with emotions, with feelings, with things that they want to accomplish, with, I hate to like humanize it too much, but they have some real human similarities to a horse has a lot of similarities to how we are. They feel things, they think things, they like to have fun, and I think non-horse people don't really understand that. And I just really feel like if more people had a relationship with a horse, this world would be a lot better place. Yeah, I think our world would be a lot better place if more people could just have that experience. We even contacted some celebrities and asked them if they want to give us some money so we can start, programs, because I think the big thing is the financial barrier. The horses are not cheap, and it doesn't matter what kind of horse you buy. As the three of us know, it's not the cost of the horse, it's the ongoing care and maintenance and facilities and everything. And I think that takes a lot of people out of the enjoyment of horses. So as far as making it more affordable for more people, I don't know the answer to that, but I think if there was a way, if we could get somebody like Dolly Parton or somebody super rich to open up 50 facilities across the country where people could just come. My dream was always, like veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder or children that were victims of horrible crimes, if they could go to a place and be paired with a horse and have that connection. Even, you all both know there's an eyeball stare when you look into a horse's eye. It's like you lose yourself. And if more people could just have that, especially the people that have been traumatized, wow, I think that would be a game changer. But I think it's going to require a lot of money because the affordability is just so bad.
I agree with that. I would love
Absolutely.
to make horses more affordable.
I wish I could give you both a big hug. This has been great.
Maybe
Next
that is a
time.
truck.
Yeah,
You're probably more comfortable. Your butt's less sore.
Yeah. Your butt hasn't fallen asleep yet, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, I've got a nice cushion.
Oh, dear.
All right.
Thank
Well,
you
let me
so
know.
much for all you do.
You're very, very welcome. I'll see you guys later.
Thank you so much, Robin. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Fifth Gate podcast. I know you've heard this on other channels, but it really is so important that you like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening through, or all of them for that matter. We would also love to hear from you on social media, so please send us ideas, suggestions, feedback, or let us know what you're enjoying right now so we can continue to make content you want to watch and hear. Thank you again for your support, and we will see you next time on the next episode of the Fifth Gate Podcast.